Ask the expert. Ask the expert. Ask the expert. They'll know what to do. Ask the expert. Ask the expert. Ask the expert. They'll know what to do.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert, an online video series hosted by the Rediscovery Centre. I'm Ed from the Rediscovery Centre, and this week it's National Heritage Week. National Heritage Week aims to raise awareness around local heritage and encourages people to conserve it. And because we are based in Ballymun, we asked you guys to submit any questions that you had about Ballymun. And to answer those questions, our expert today is our tour guide, our visitor engagement officer, and general oral history nerd, Luke Murphy. Hiya, Luke.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for that.
So, Luke, what have we got in store for Heritage Week?
Yeah, so this year we're doing something a little bit different. We launched tours last year on Heritage Week, and we're doing our tours again this year. So from Wednesday to Saturday, we're running free tours. And what we've also asked people to do is send in questions, any question that anyone has ever had regarding Ballymun in the past, or even in the present. So we're after getting a few questions in. So this episode of Ask the Expert will answer them questions, hopefully. And we'll also be talking to Robert Murphy, who is somewhat of a Ballymun celebrity. So it'll be great to have him on and answering them questions from the perspective of a Ballymunner, I suppose.
Great. Well, that leads us on nicely then to our questions. So we'll start with that. And the first question comes in from Tom and Santry, and he says, very few people seem to talk about Ballymun before the flats. So can you tell us a little bit about Ballymun, what Ballymun looked like before the 1960s, Luke?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and it's true. And not a lot of people talk about Ballymun before the 1960s. They just think, I suppose, Ballymun started when the flats were built, which is true in a sense. Before the 1960s, there wasn't really much here. It was all fields, it was all farmland. And where the flats were built and where Ballymun is today isn't actually the original Ballymun. So Ballymun would have been one of the townlands in the parish of Santry, and it was actually the most northern townland in the parish of Santry. But all of the townlands that are in Ballymun today aren't actually the townland of Ballymun. So some of the estates, the likes of Sillogue, Belclare, they'd be the original townlands, but the original Ballymun would have been just north of the M50, so over towards the airport, I suppose. And there was about 6 dwellings listed in the early 1900s in Ballymun. So when you have that, and then jump into 20,000 people here, 60 years later, it's quite significant. But yeah, it would have been part of what was the Domville estate. So the Domvilles would have owned the land all over Santry. They would have had a big estate house, which would have been where Fingal Park is today, and they would have controlled all the lands around here. Interestingly enough, Santry, Ballymun would have been the main mail route out of Dublin, so going up towards Belfast. So in the 18th century, it was well known for its highway robberies, a lot of highwaymen, a lot of crime around the area. So yeah, it was sort of renowned, I suppose, but ultimately it would have been just agricultural land up until the development in the 60s.
Okay, and the next question then comes in from Jennifer in Drumcondra, and she wanted to know why was there a brand new town built on the outskirts of Dublin from scratch, housing so many people, and what was it like to live there?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it was essentially built from scratch because there was nothing here before the 60s. The reason for this was there was a housing crisis in Dublin in the early 1960s. And this would have been the inner city tenements. In 1963, these conditions, I suppose, really got bad. There was tenement collapses on Fenian Street, Bolton Street. 2 little girls died in December 1963 from a tenement collapse in Fenian Street in the inner city. So that sort of prompted the government to come up with, a solution to the housing crisis. So in 1964, they started planning Ballymun. And essentially it was a move to this, I suppose, brand new way of living in Ireland. It was high rise, you were going to have around 3,000 dwellings. But yeah, it was built, it was chosen this location because there was lots of land But essentially it was taking people from well-established, community networks from the inner city and trying to create a brand new community a couple of miles outside the inner city. So I suppose from the start, people were really happy with their houses. They were happy with their flats. It was new, it was shiny. They had free central heating. They had free hot water, which would have been powered from the boiler house where we're sitting now. But I suppose the real problem started with the lack of amenities. So there wasn't enough, things for kids to do. There was the shopping centre. It took them years to build the shopping centre, so people would have had to commute in and out of town just to get, basic necessities. And it'll be interesting now when we bring Rob in to ask him about, the likes of the van shops. I suppose it was really this sense of identity amongst Ballymunners because they were, from this unique place, which, as Jennifer mentioned there, was built essentially from scratch. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question. I could go on all day. I suppose you could write a book about it. But and then just in terms of living in the flats, a lot of people will tell you now, the last tower block came down 5 years ago, 2015. A lot of people will tell you how much they miss the flats. Really they were cozy. As far as I know, you had your free central heat and you had your free hot water. And a lot of people will tell you how much, they miss the flats. And maybe from the outside, it would have looked, I suppose, generic everywhere you went in Ballymun. The 36 blocks were the exact same looking, but anyone that lived in the flats, it was their own home. They made it their own essentially. And people were quite happy with the living conditions inside the flats from the start. But I suppose this would have, deteriorated over the course of the 80s and 90s, which led to the change.
Okay. Look, that's really good and that's very interesting. And thanks very much for giving us the sort of history side of things, because that's, of course, your speciality and what you're an expert in. But I think for the next couple of questions, it's very much focusing more on what it was like to actually live here in Ballymun. And I'm a Culchie and you're from Tala, so I suppose we're no experts in this. So that's why we're going to bring in Robert Murphy. So I'd like to welcome Robert to the call. Thanks for joining us, Rob, local entrepreneur and local boy, been here all your life.
Yeah, thanks very much for that great introduction, Ed. You're very kind. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, so we were just saying that the next question is more about what it was like growing up, I suppose, in Ballymun, and neither of us are qualified to say that. So thanks very much for joining us on this call. Of course, everybody knows Rob is owner of local land Supervalu. Established when, Rob?
2005 for Supervalu. Yeah.
Fantastic. Of course, you were on for a lot longer before that, because there was a few questions that came in about the old van shops, and that's where you started, Rob. So will you tell us about the van shops?
Yeah, so you know the way in your life twists and turns. So it just happened to be that I'd started a part-time job in a van shop on Balbutcher Lane, and the van shop was owned by my cousin, first cousin, and I was doing Sundays there and Sunday evenings. And prior to that, I'd been in America for a few years and managed to save up a few bob and brought some money back home from America. The family had a little bit of money as well. And then the opportunity came up around about 1988. Were we interested in buying the van shop? And when I look back at it, it was a 20-foot container, steel container, freezing in the winter, roasting in the summer, very limited stock. But it was up for sale for £5,000 at the time. And Ed, it was all the money in the world we had at the time. But lo and behold, like most entrepreneurs and most business people, you take a leap of faith, and we jumped right in as a family at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Rob, I just wanted to ask you, because a lot of people that come in and take the tour and stuff always ask about the van shops, and they really seem to be kind of part of the, I suppose, landscape of Ballymun in a way. They were everywhere. And I always wondered how they came about in general, because obviously one of the things with Ballymun in the 70s was the lack of kind of amenities, the lack of shops. Do you think it was very much, initiative on the part of people, local people?
Yeah, you're dead right, Luke. It really was. It was I think it was solution based, like, you know, that there was a big void in relation to the services that were provided in the community. And, you know, the shopping centre would have started late, and, you know, they have reduced opening hours, didn't open early, didn't open late at night. So yeah, the van shop would have been very solution based to what the community was looking for. But you also have to remember as well, with the time round about the early 1980s, there was very little work. You know, a lot of people were unemployed. So again, it was people trying to start a business, people trying to get out and work and make some extra money and make some money. So yeah, very, very solution-based, the van shop. And I think there was 23 at one stage. And, you know, I know from our van shop point of view as well, you're always trying to be one better by opening an hour later or opening an hour earlier, stocking an extra few products that somebody else didn't sell. Yeah.
Typically, what did you sell?
Well, you know, there's a joke in my family in relation to 2 kilo roosters. So, you know, you take a 10 kilo bag of potatoes, roosters, and you divide it into 5, you make 2 kilo bags of roosters. Like my daughter, all my kids would have made 2 kilo roosters over the years, you know, but it was a way of buying something at wholesale and selling something at retail. We sold, you know, groceries, bread, milk, cakes, a lot of chocolate, a lot of confectionery. An awful lot of confectionery. For the square footage, I think our van shop, especially when it was in Poppentry, would have sold more confectionery than a lot of shops on high streets, you know, back in the day. Butter, milk, breads. You know, we done slushies then, you know, as time went on. You know, full range. And over the years, it's always changing. You know, retailing's always, every business is always changing. So you would have always changed with the demand. Yeah.
So I remember hearing someone saying that they used to, you know, tie a bag to a string, and they drop down the bag and get the kids thrown over to the van shop and throw whatever they got in the bag and hire it back up to the flat. So there's so many different kind of stories knocking about, you know, which the van shops feature. But there's a brilliant photo of Nan's actually, with the young lad with the horse outside it. I'm sure you've seen it. We might be able to show it, but excellent photo, yeah. And sorry, I was just going to say, Robert, like, it's really interesting, you know, you starting off like that, and, you know, I suppose over the years opening Supervalu, and then you're heavily involved in Ballymun for Business now as well. So can you tell us a bit about, I suppose, the evolution of, you know, you've seen everything to change? And
yeah, and it's, I think you've hit on something very good there, Luke. Like the evolution, probably the evolution of me as well. So, you know, growing up in Ballymun, and you'd have to say Ballymun has always been very, very solution based, you know, because everything has come out of the community. And, you know, all the pillars of the community that we have now, you know, including your own organisation, have always come from a need within the community to do something better. So, yeah, I think me as a person, I've seen that when I was growing up in relation to regeneration itself came from a need within the community to better itself, to want a new community for itself. So any of the organisations we have locally have all come from the community. And I think myself, with that, you know, community spirit, seeing that as I was growing up in various different people and in various different organisations, would always have instilled that sense of pride and sense of trying to better yourself and better the community in anything you do. So, yeah, I think that's why I do what I do in relation to the volunteering and the giving back and shining a positive light on what's good about Ballymun and the way we're moving forward.
Great. Well, that's fantastic, and that pretty much covers everything. Of course, it's we're doing this because of Heritage Week, Rob, and no better person to give us a little bit more in depth into the heritage of Ballymun than yourself. So thanks very much for your time, and thanks, Luke, for helping out today and giving us some facts on the history of Ballymun. And thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two about Ballymun, and there's lots more to learn, and there's lots more to go through with the tours that we're doing in the centre as well. So if you're tuning into this and it's still a Heritage Week, make sure and stop in for one of our tours. So I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks very much, and thanks again for watching.
Thanks, Luke.
Cheers, thanks.
Ask the expert. Ask the expert. Ask the expert. They'll know what to do. Ask the expert. Ask the expert. Ask the expert. They'll